Hi, my name is Goldman. I'm an attorney with Goldman and Associates. Today I want to talk to you about something that's really a very important topic, and that is how to have a successful divorce. You know, people always talk about successful marriage, and that's a great thing, but you got to understand that statistically speaking, half the marriages don't last forever. And in the state of Michigan and probably the country, at least 50% of them end up in divorces. So that marital relationship is at least 50% likely to end. Whereas the divorce relationship, 99.9%, you're going to carry that relationship for the rest of your life. Because if you're going to remarry the same person, you'll likely have similar problems. And if you're going to marry someone else, you're still going to have the divorce problems from the first one. So it becomes very, very important to figure out how to have a successful divorce. Now, when people talk about a successful divorce, what are we really talking about? You're essentially talking about three things. Number one, if you got kids, you got to have a healthy relationship where you get along with your kids in the divorce environment. Number two, how to work together with your ex-husband or ex-wife. And number three, how to financially survive the divorce process. Those are three key things in a successful divorce. But if you look at those three things carefully, those are all things that occur in the post-divorce environment. But you don't leapfrog into the post-divorce environment without laying appropriate foundation during the divorce. So how you achieve a successful divorce is directly related to a couple things that you do during the divorce, and that lays the foundation for a successful divorce. Let's talk about those things first, since those are really the seeds that we plant in order to have a successful divorce at the end of the day. Number one, watch who you hire to represent you in a divorce. A lot of people over the years I've seen tend to hire people with whom they identify. So for example, I've always seen if the client is a very, sort of soft-spoken, very pleasant, sort of professional person, you can expect that the lawyer that they're going to hire is going to be of the same variety. On the flip side, if somebody's a real jerk, they're probably going to hire a lawyer that's a real jerk. And the problem with all of that is it's not necessarily something good for the ultimate divorce process. So when you're determining who to hire, don't hire somebody that you identify with right now because you're in some terrible emotional state and you want to get somebody who's a real jerk, so they'll be a jerk to your husband. You get that kind of person, and guess what? He's going to be a jerk, all right. He's going to be a jerk to you. That's what's going to happen. You don't need that. You need to figure out what you want your post-divorce relationship to look like. And then you have to get someone who you identify with because their vision of how things should look at the end is the same as yours. That's what you need. So if you want somebody, if your vision of things is that you're going to get along with your ex, you're going to work together for the benefit of the children, you're going to work together on financial things should they come up, if that's what you want, get a lawyer whose vision of the ultimate outcome is the same. I can't tell you how many people come to us or they call us up and they say, oh, I'm looking for someone who's a real shark. You're looking for a shark, buy an aquarium, okay? Get a boat. You don't need a law firm if you're looking for a shark. If you're looking for someone who will, in an appropriate way, preserve your post-divorce relationship so that you can survive it, then find a lawyer that does that. That's the appropriate way to handle it. So you got to figure out what your post-divorce relationship should look like, and you got to find someone who identifies with that vision. That's number one. Number two, conduct yourself and do the things that are necessary to achieve and further the goal and the process. Again, if your goal is to have a successful relationship with your ex-husband, then you cannot do things during the divorce that will militate against that. So if you want to have a kind of working relationship where if you bring the kids back 20 minutes late, that somebody won't be there waiting to holler at you. If you want to have a working relationship, then make sure that during the divorce, when those things come up, that's the example that you set. So if she's supposed to bring the kids back at 6:30 and she shows up Sunday night at 7 o'clock, don't go whining to your lawyer that he should file a show cause about that. Number one, it's going to end up costing you a lot of money. Number two, she'll never forget that you did that. And ultimately, until those kids are 18, you're going to have to live with the fruits of that. So if you want to sow that kind of relationship, that's what you're going to get stuck with. If you want to have the kind of working relationship, and what you do in that scenario is you call her up and you say, Sally, we're supposed to have the kids back at 6:30. Came closer to 7. Maybe you could work on that next time. Let's get it a little bit closer because I've got things I've got to do. Sit down and talk to the person like a normal person. A normal person doesn't run to the judge every 5 minutes when there's a problem, okay? That's not the kind of relationship you want to have in the future, so don't start that during the divorce. Now, having said that, don't mirror the bad behavior of your ex, because your ex may not understand this advice, may not understand that there's a long-term picture as well as the short-term picture. If they're constantly telling on you, so to speak, about every little thing that you do, don't feel that you should do that too, because all that's going to happen is you're going to spend a huge amount of money running up a huge legal bill, and then at the end of the day, you're not going to be happier. He's not going to be happier. The judge isn't going to like either one of you. And you know what? When it's all over, you're not going to be able to work together. And remember what I said. Marriages, 50% of them come and go, but divorces last forever. You're going to be in that relationship till the end. So in light of that, let's create a scenario where you can actually work with the relationship. Now, having said that, I acknowledge, and I have to tell you, it's not always possible to do that. Sometimes your ex might be doing something that's dangerous to the children. She may be a drug addict. He may be driving around the kids while he's intoxicated. You can't let that slide. That's not what I'm talking about. Those egregious things, you have to contact your lawyer. And the two of you have to have a sit down and decide, should we bring this to the attention of the other side? Should we bring it to the attention of the court? If we do that, how will it fit, play in the overall picture? That's appropriate thing that you got to do. But you also have to be judicious about it. You have to decide, I'm going to complain about that I'm going to leave. I'm going to make an issue of this, I'm going to set that one aside. You've got to make that decision, because ultimately you've got to make the choice of what's worth fighting about and what's not. You've got to ask yourself, am I going to gain out of this, and are the children going to be bettered by it? If you can't give a resounding yes to those questions, don't bother with it. Just to get somebody else in trouble gives you nothing. If it's going to benefit you because it'll further a better relationship, of course, that's something to consider. But don't just do it out of spite, and don't get caught up in the whole divorce thing. Number 3, don't take advice from anybody who's not a lawyer. More specifically, don't take advice from anybody who's not your lawyer. Forget about your girlfriends. Forget about your buddies at work who went through the same thing you did. None of that's relevant. Don't listen to advice from people who don't know what they're talking about. You trust a particular person. You hired him and his firm to represent you. Go to them for the professional advice. Much like you'd go to a surgeon if you needed a surgery and you want to ask the bartender about that. In the same way, share important legal things with your lawyer. That's what you're paying them all that money for. Talk to them about that. The moment you start listening to advice from friends or even family who mean well, parents, siblings, the moment you start doing that, you dilute the relationship with your lawyer and you dilute the quality of guidance that you're getting. Because your lawyer is going to tell you something, and without their input, that's where you're headed. The moment you start factoring their input into his guidance, you dilute the quality of the guidance. And that's not going to help you. That's just going to make things worse. So if you want to have a successful divorce, follow those 3 things. You do that, and you are assured that you will have a successful divorce, you will have a successful post-divorce relationship, and you'll be able to move on. It's not always such a pretty picture, but if you do this, you put it in a nice frame, and then you can live with the result.